everybody. It's 8:30. We'll call this morning's meeting to order. Our first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
Move to approve.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. Next, we have employee recognitions. I believe we have 3 of them today. Specs are real sensitive.
They turned them up.
Turned it up for the public hearing so that the audience can hear today.
Oh, all right, very good. Okay, our first longevity award today is for Cindy Sunday. She's here, Cindy. And Cindy, it's 20 years. And so this is presented in grateful recognition for 20 years of outstanding and dedicated service to Clay County, its citizens. Cindy, congratulations. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
All right, Matt.
The sheriff's gone today, so I'm just going to say a few things, 10, 15 minutes. Cindy started in '97, right after the craziness of the flood, and I think it's been crazy ever since. She's one of 5 record staff people that we have. She does a great job. She's been really involved with big cases that we've had throughout the years, a lot of homicides, serious assaults, arsons, that kind of thing. She puts together all of those books, packages for the County Attorney's Office for prosecution, so we couldn't have done it without you. We look forward to another 20 years.
Thank you, Cindy. Next, we have Susan Hanson, and is Susan here? No. Okay, okay. Stephen, you're going to come up. And Susan also had 20 years, so you make sure you give her a thank you. And do you want to?
I can say, sure. Sue's been with us for 20 years, but not on a normal PM. She's been the PRPM secretary. And again, I think the challenge about that is oftentimes, not only in addition to her responsibilities for us, she also works part-time or half-time through the school. And so making sure all the records get done and make sure our needs of our kids are being done is important. The second part of that is because she's on the PM shift, a lot of those initial visits from our parents the first time they come in are with her, and she's the first person they meet. And I think we talk a lot about customer service here at the county, and I think Sue really exemplifies what community or what that effort is. Oftentimes those parents are coming in upset, scared, they've not navigated the juvenile system, and by the time they have that initial meeting with her, she kind of calms them down for our counseling staff, and so for all those reasons, she's just been a great asset for us.
All right, we be sure to tell her thank you for.
We will.
And next we have Juan Martinez, and Juan is not going to be here either. So we have Rhonda, and Rhonda, you'll take this back, and Juan has 25 years of service to Clay County. So Rhonda, do you want to say something?
Sure. Okay, well, Juan does have 25 years with us here in Clay County. He works in our child support unit, and so he is really instrumental with a team of folks to ensure that our kids and families are supported where we have a non-custodial parent, to ensure child support payments, and which, you know, as you can imagine, is very helpful when we're trying to help families and kids be successful and be financially supported. So we really appreciate his work. He's been an asset to our agency for 25 years.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Sorry. It is, and I don't want it in my face.
Okay, our next item is the approval of the bills and vouchers.
So moved.
And we have a motion and a second. All right, any further discussion? Not all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. Approval of minutes from May 16th.
Move to approve.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion, corrections? All in favor signify saying aye. Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. Next, we have a recognition of a donation, and what we do when we get these is we certainly like to thank these people for donating to certain areas that they like to support, and this one today came from the Scandia Lutheran Church in the amount of $50, and they wanted that to go towards the jail work detail. So on behalf of our county board, we want to say thank you to Scandia Lutheran Church for that. Okay, our next item is approval of temporary veteran service representative. Kurt? Good morning.
How are you?
We're doing well, I think. How are you doing?
I'm great.
All right. All right. We didn't expect to hear any different.
No, you wouldn't either.
That's why I said it.
Just ask for approval to fill in while Jennifer's on maternity leave. Past history is that Kevin's filled in. Done a good job. Want to start him August 1st. Kevin Roslin is filled in. So August 1st, couple days, few hours up till the birth of the baby to get him orientated on changes and stuff. So, and the impact is there in the budget source and everything else. So.
Well, you definitely need to have that. So.
Well, you know, it's a learning process every day, and I'm just, you know, especially with ultimate honors that Jennifer does so well. That's what Kevin's going to be mostly orientated on, to do those. Those are just time consuming. But yeah, it stays busy.
Right?
Make a motion to approve.
Okay. We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Awesome.
All right, you're good to go. Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you.
Dave and Eric, we have a few items today. Did you want to talk to me about?
Yeah, I'll just bring up the text that we had, I guess,
Okay,
really
sure.
quick. I had some conversation with some residents that were concerned about County Aid. It's the one that I talked about, the shoulder sloughing, and I appreciate you getting right back to me that they're prepping it. As I drove in today, they were out prepping it to do some overlay on it, so thank you for addressing that.
So are they digging that out then, or what are they doing?
I think they kind of dug out and put some asphalt on the shoulders, just to kind of hold the asphalt in. It's also sloughing in the driving lane itself on the eastbound lane, so they're gonna pave that lane in so we don't have that dip in there, so.
Good, very good. All right, so that's being addressed. Good. All right, so Dave, your first item here today is you're recommending approval of the final payment for the joint highway and landfill shop.
Yeah, Eric's done a really good job of keeping the solid waste department head, Kurt, in the loop on this. We did run everything by him. I believe he has approved, you know, the overage and underages as shown in our packet as well. The original contract was just a little over $1,100,000. It was $1,179,000. We put, you know, we do all the design in-house. We don't hire anybody, so there is some things that maybe get overlooked a little bit. One of them being LED lights. I guess we didn't really know any better. We put the same lights in that we did when we built the Barnesville shop. During construction, we was kind of decided to go with LED lighting. It used a lot less electricity, and we were lucky enough to get an energy credit as well from the Wild Rice Electric Company, but it doesn't come without a cost. We also didn't quite plan for enough concrete, kind of on the west side of the, was it west side of the building?
The south side.
South side of the building. And that's kind of where the electronics drop-off is. That's where some of the customers come into that sort of the building. I think the solid waste landfill office is on that side. So we extended the apron a little bit, but it's a 90-foot building, so 10 feet by 90 feet equated to a little bit. So the real biggest change to the design was the addition of the sprinkler systems, though. We were given information that we didn't believe we needed it. There was a recent building code change with regard to these buildings. If you get over a certain size, I think it was either 5,000 or 7,000 square feet, you need to have a sprinkler system. You know, we don't have municipal water out there, so we did have, you know, we got a well. Eric and I went round and round with trying to find different alternatives rather than what we ended up having is a, I don't know, 15,000 gallon holding tank
I figure you have to for that.
inside the building, so our storage is essentially a water tower inside the building, but there was no other options for it. The complete cost for the tank and the pump and all the piping for the sprinkler systems throughout the building was about $124,000. So we skirted around this issue, if you remember, Kevin, when we did the Barnesville shop. We were under 5,000 square feet there, so we did not have to have it, but we were darn close. I know the building inspector down there we worked with, we talked about it a little bit, and things changed, I guess, in the last 5 years. So all in all, though, I think the project turned out really good, I guess. The entities are getting together really fine. We're making a lot of good joint decisions out there. It's going to clearly meet our needs for a long time. I think there's room for, a little room for expansion out there.
I think the SWAC group is going to meet out there this month.
Okay.
The meeting. So we'll
Great.
get a chance to see it too.
So I guess the, you know,
Okay. All right, so we need approval for that.
Yep.
Move approval. I'll second that. And I do want to add that this is a great addition to the Clay County. I mean, that's good improvement. I think we needed it. And the sprinkler system, yes. I mean, our budget will take that, I hope.
Yep.
But, I mean, it needs to be done, but it is a great improvement for the Clay County solid waste up there. It's great. I mean,
What was that percentage again? Was it 60-40 between the highway and landfill?
Yeah, it's-
40 highway and 60?
No, other way around.
Other way around?
Yep. Yeah, we got the bigger. Yep.
Mr. Brewer?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just kind of an interesting note. When we first started talking about this, we thought the price would be around $1.4 million, if you remember. So it's nice to see that come in under that 1.4.
And the sale that we approved last week kind of goes against this deal
Yep,
too, right?
yep, both of our shop sales, in addition to, I think we moved some money from 2016 as well as kind of a down payment, so
Right.
I'll put those numbers together for us to kind of see where we're at and how long it's going to take to pay back.
Okay.
I do want to also concur, it's a great asset to the community. I was out as part of the cleanup days that they had at the landfill this spring with a few different 4-H clubs from around the community, and it's really a great place for people to kind of gather. Before, there really wasn't anywhere to do that, so good job, thanks.
All right. Any further discussion? Sounds like it's well-liked out there. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. We'll move into the, you're recommending approval of consulting service contract with Barb Rhodey and Associates, and maybe you can give a little background.
Sure.
Because we haven't used her service for a couple of years now.
Correct.
So.
I think we initially kind of got in contact with Ms. Rhodey through the city of Moorhead. I believe she did some lobbying, consulting services for the city. We also utilized her when we were looking at trying to figure out how we're going to fund County Road 52 back in the 2008 to 2012 kind of those years. And she did, she's based out of Washington D.C. and she's got a good contingency down there. She did get us a little bit of money. We had about a 235,000 TCSP grant, I think it was called, that we got to finish the work in the city of Barnesville on 52. And she reached out to me about a month ago and said that with the new president, his administration, there may be some additional funds coming down, and she would be willing to work for us at no cost unless we actually receive a grant in excess of $1 million. So I talked to Brian a little bit, and we talked at our highway committee and decided to bring it to the board to see what your thoughts were. But and I did also run it by Jenny a little bit. The contract, the letter that you guys have in your packet is the exact same contract we did put together in 2014 when we worked with her. Essentially, it says that she'll work for us at no cost. And if we do exceed a grant of $1 million, it'll probably look like about 180 hours of her time at $500 an hour.
Well, I want to speak a little bit. I know that back at that time when that was being done, Commissioner Waller and I took a trip out to Washington, D.C., at Barb's request, and she had set up an unbelievable schedule of people to meet, so she really worked hard on that and had an awful lot of connections. We were going back and forth between the Senate and House committee buildings, you know, and meeting with several people, so, and it went from morning till, you know, night, so she certainly is aggressive, you know, and obviously, if we can get $1 million and, we don't, and there's no pay unless she's successful, I think it would be in our best interest to.
What she's asking for, it would be about, what, 9% of anything over $1 million or something like that?
Well, it's strictly based on her hours worked, though.
Yes, yep.
So,
And I was thinking about, that's one of the things that she should probably still continue to provide is updates, like when she did it last time, she gave us monthly updates, and I think we should see that same thing, so we got something in our files as well.
and another thing that can benefit from that is the current administration that's there is dealing with budgets and highway and all that kind of stuff. She might have her ear to some other things that could be developing there that could be of interest or significance to Clay County to pursue, so I certainly think this is worthwhile to do. It's the board's wishes.
I'll make a motion to approve the contract.
All right.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. And motion carried. And do you have a recommended approval of quotes for flooring improvements at the joint use facility? That's the joint facility with the highway, the city, and the county.
Yep. So we did a little work out there over the last, we worked on 2 projects that are currently just wrapping up. One is the HVAC controls. We're putting all new controls in there that haven't been working for many years. That was a joint project that was approved by the board and approved by the managing entity committee that we do, and that was just under $100,000. That one's just wrapping up, and so far it's working fantastic. We're getting all the controls and all the heaters and all the boilers and things to work and talk and actually function. We also did a painting contract out there that was about just under $9,000. So we painted all the hallways, all the poles, all the offices on the front part of the building. What we'd like to do here is replace and cover some of the flooring in the back by the maintenance area. There's a small area that's got some carpet in it that runs from the warm storage area to the locker room. In the past 10 years, it's been stained by oil and asphalt, and it takes the janitorial crew quite a while to clean these things up. The scale in the MnDOT district office in Detroit Lakes has a flooring material that is very durable, very easy to clean up, and I guess we'd like to go with that very same material. So we talked about it a little bit at our committee, and our staff went out and got a couple of quotes, and we ended up with a couple of contractors, the FM Flooring, that has a material that's kind of similar, and then the Hiller Commercial Floors from Rochester is the company that did the actual work for the scale, and then in Detroit Lakes, and his material comes from overseas, and he's got it on hand, so we know it's readily available, which we'd like to get it down and in, so he would be just a couple $100 more, but we really like that material. It seems like it's a little more durable. It's a little, when you bend it, our staff that looked at it thought that would probably be the way to go. So I guess I'd like to recommend approval. Like I said, the state and the city have both approved the project. It'd be a 3-way split on this, and something that we could get done this fall, and it'd be a little easier to clean up. It's gonna look a little bit nicer. Right now, there's part of it's got the kind of colored concrete back there, and I think this will spruce it up a little bit. It'll be a lot easier to clean. It'll get rid of some of the carpeting.
Are you saying that the 13,000 is our, or are we splitting that 3?
Yep, that would be the total cost, so that would be split 3 ways.
Okay, all right.
What is this material?
It's kind of, it's the squares. It's like a...
Is it
like,
carpet?
No, it's
Oh.
kind of like a linoleum, something that you
Yep.
could mop.
Yep, gotcha.
Okay.
Well, make a motion to approve the request.
Second.
We have a motion and a second discussion. And I guess I just wonder about the significance of the difference between the 2 floorings. I'm kind of, if we can use local, I like to use local. And
Sure. And I agree, we did talk about that. This gentleman, the Hiller Companies, he does all kinds of work in town. I know he may not be local, but he does, like I said, he did the scale work, he did MnDOT's work, he's done other work in town, so he has crews here. I know he may not be local, but the flooring.
So is the product considerably
Yes.
different?
It was definitely a major reason why we chose the one that we chose. The other material is not the same, and we don't even know for sure if it would be available, like he says, because apparently it's really, really hard to get. The material that he showed us just wasn't the same. I don't know if it's gonna hold up as well. It might, I don't know, it might tear or cut a little bit. It just didn't seem like I said, that's the groups, when they took a good look at the two different samples, they really were against the one.
Right, well, if there's no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign, motion carried. Let's see, Dave, do we have more here?
I think that's it.
I think that's it, yeah.
We were gonna try to meet with the Highway Tracking Committee after the insurance meeting, is that correct? Okay.
Right, Frank, you were on board with that, right?
Yeah, right.
We've only got 2 items, so it should go pretty quick.
Okay, very good.
I just want to mention that Dave and Eric, we went up to Ewing Township last night, and appreciate you guys going along up there. We got not a problem, we got a bridge that has to be repaired, and we had a very good discussion up there. Appreciate you guys going up there, taking your time.
It worked out good. Yeah, we've got a bridge with a fairly low sufficiency rating, and it's been on our bridge replacement list for the last couple of years, and in-house, we talked about potentially eliminating this structure, and after our meeting last night, they proposed an idea of maybe putting in kind of a low-volume Texas crossing type of design, which would be a lot cheaper, and it's something that we've done a couple of them, not a lot of them, but it might still provide the access to be used, but yet during high water flows, water just come up and over, so you don't have to build the bridge quite so big. They did have a FEMA project on there probably about 5 years ago or so, where the actual overflow was maybe south of the bridge, 100 feet or so, 50 to 100 feet. So this area was armored with concrete, so they've already got $100,000 of FEMA dollars that were spent on this. So it does kind of make sense in this area, rather than tear it all out, throw that FEMA mitigation fix away. Maybe we can go and kind of add to it and have the whole works be a little bit of a low water crossing. So Eric and I are going to talk with MnDOT, we're going to talk with the watershed and the DNR a little bit and make sure that the design would be feasible and approved and funded by MnDOT's town bridge program. So it was actually a good idea. We're just going to see, hopefully it's all approvable by MnDOT.
Yeah, it was just a good meeting with the township and county working together there, really. You know, they were good guys to work with up there, and worked out good.
And then the County Road 95, which you changed the name of, did we change the name?
Yeah, it's County Road 9 now.
9 now,
Yep.
and that's gonna get work this week on that?
Should be getting sprayed possibly today.
Okay, and they were gonna grade it first, right?
Yep, correct. Brian was out there with a couple different guys. I think one of our retirees came back, I believe, and both guys are gonna kind of shape that up. I know John's been working on that a little bit, so.
Yeah, I know, I've got a couple of calls about it, and I told them that I thought it was gonna be this week. So.
Yep.
We did,
Spray for dust?
yep, the dust control. And we did talk to Dennis Drews, and it sounds like they're gonna be out there this June, hopefully, to finish up the ditch work,
Okay,
so.
so that'll kind of be the final work before then the servicing next summer, right?
Yep, correct.
Should we do a final inspection of that, or what, or how does that work?
Like of the ditches?
Yeah.
Yep, correct. We'll have a guy out there. Because we'll probably have to help a little bit with some survey. Because the ditches are so flat, and it's got to be graded just right. And I think what we told the residents initially was, it's going to be almost impossible to get things to drain that don't drain in this area, but it shouldn't be any worse than it was before we got there. Okay. So if it was flat, or if there was this much drop in a mile, there'll be that much drop in a mile when we leave. There's just nothing you can do. You really can't change it. I know we're trying to grade east and west on the township roads a little bit, and that'll help with some of the water get around the corners. But, I mean, is that correct, Eric? I mean, it's just so flat, there's no drop out there.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Everything else going good with the highway for?
Yeah.
Broke ground out front, obviously.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, you're making a mess.
Yeah, hopefully it'll be over quick.
Thank you. All right, it's our 9 o'clock item is a presentation and proclamation of World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. Pat Boyer, and it looks like you've got some company with you, Pat. Good morning. Just, Pat, as each of you talk, just make sure you're talking to a microphone, okay? And I'm assuming you're going to lead it off?
Yep,
Pat?
I'll lead it off,
Well,
yeah.
good morning to you all.
Good morning, everybody. So we are here today to talk about World Elder Abuse Awareness Day and to ask for a proclamation. And how about we'll do some quick introductions and then I'll say a few words and then pass it off to these guys. So, Lori.
Good morning. Thank you for having us again. My name is Lori Conroy. I'm one of the assistant Clay County attorneys.
Corinne Graham, Adult Protection, Clay County.
And Tracy Levin, Adult Protection, Clay County.
So I brought our adult protection workers with, so you had a face to who's doing the adult protection investigations in our county. And I just wanted to tell you guys that in 2016, we screened over 400 reports just in Clay County. These reports did not include facilities. So anything that's screened regarding a facility goes directly to the state. So these are just reports that come into Clay County. We investigated 170 of them this past year. When I looked back on what kinds of allegations came in the past year, the highest one by far is self-neglect. We have a lot of people, probably at least 50% or more elderly, but a lot of self-neglect. It's people that just aren't able to care for themselves anymore. Right after that, it's financial exploitation is the highest one. So I had asked Lori if she would come today to talk a little bit about any cases that she has worked on, particularly as it relates to financial exploitation or anything else related to that too.
I would agree with Pat's numbers. So law enforcement has vastly increased the number of these types of cases that they're screening. Much of that is at the result of the system that's been developed in the state of Minnesota regarding one-call reporting, and those items are coming in and being screened by law enforcement. Within the county, investigators are taking a look at those cases. Within the city of Moorhead, their general crimes investigators are taking a look at those cases. There are a number of those cases that are still currently being investigated, a number of those cases that are under review in our office, including financial exploitation. I would say that the one thing that we have seen a change in, and I know I talked about this with the commission last year, is as we're hearing about the opiate crisis, we are seeing some of that affecting our cases involving vulnerable adults, particularly the elderly. We have had a number of theft of controlled substance cases that involve caretakers of vulnerable adults who are taking medications from those individuals. With respect to the financial exploitation, I think that is much like a flashlight. You turn it on and you turn it off, and if you turn the flashlight on, you're going to see and illuminate that. Our office has had a number of these cases that are being prosecuted. Some of them are being prosecuted as financial exploitation of vulnerable adults. Others are being prosecuted as theft cases, and some, as check forgery or cases like that. It just depends on the specific facts. And so I would say that in the conversations that I've had with our colleagues across the river in North Dakota, our statutes are well written and working well for us in the state of Minnesota and are allowing us to get good results in those cases. Unfortunately, individuals continue to be taken advantage of, either locally by family members or those who have gotten close to them, or by international folks. You're going to hear, if you have an opportunity to come on Thursday to World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, a Jamaican scam that affected folks here regionally, and those scams are happening here. Currently, there are scams like that under investigation here locally as well. This past year, we successfully convicted an individual who had placed an ad in the local newspaper for landscaping services. And it's a little unclear, and it even remained unclear when we resolved the case, as to how he came into contact with a particular vulnerable adult here in our community. because she couldn't tell us. In fact, when she would meet with the investigator, who would come by quite frequently, from time to time, she could not remember who that individual was. What was concerning to the investigator was that he would come to conduct his investigation, and there would be suspects sitting down at the kitchen table having coffee with our vulnerable adult. Ultimately, in that case, we were able to find out that he had done some landscaping in her yard. However, when we obtained estimates as to what the work he had done, which include putting some pavers and a couple of small shrubs in, it was approximately $1,200 worth of materials and perhaps a bit of labor, but not much labor, although he had charged her more than $6,000 and had actually had his girlfriend there receiving some checks from the vulnerable adult as well, which we're not exactly sure what those were for, perhaps just benevolence because she was expecting at the time. We did end up resolving those cases successfully with a conviction. In that case, he was charged with financial exploitation and some insufficient funds checks because he had actually tried to pay her back. And we convicted him of a felony insufficient funds check because we had an individual who could not come and testify at trial, which is one of the challenges that we see in those cases. We're continuing to work with our partners across the river in Minnesota and in North Dakota in developing the Clay and Cass Elder Abuse Forensic Network, which allows us to talk about these cases and the challenges. We meet monthly and discuss cases, much like a child abuse forensic MBT would meet and discuss cases. And that does help us come up with some ideas to brainstorm cases. But those are just some highlights from the prosecution perspective this year.
Okay, and then Colleen, I had asked her to just think about the more typical investigations that she's been involved with in the past year, self-neglect or financial exploitation, and just to give us a few words about what she has seen, because there's been a lot of interesting cases.
Well, just, excuse me, to continue on with like the financial exploitation, the scams are huge, and you know, where people are giving $630,000 to these scammers. I have had clients that have remortgaged their homes and have lost cars and vehicles because of these scams. Another thing that we've noticed is soliciting, and not just, and it might not actually be maltreatment, but elderly with dementia will get solicited from congressmen, organizations like the NRA, the 60 Plus organization, and then just start sending money to them. And once they start sending money, they start getting solicited more, and then they just keep sending money because they don't know what they're doing, or they don't realize that they're sending all their money away, and then they don't remember. So that's been really huge, is trying to educate people on the do not call list, getting them on the do not mail list, so that the soliciting stops. Educating family that when your parents are getting older and they have dementia, you really need, and if you're the power of attorney, you really need to look at their finances and help them, even if you don't want to, or like step on their toes or make them mad, but you really need to help protect their assets. On self-neglect, the kind of a typical one is an elderly couple or an elderly person living on their own that we get a report saying, you know, they are falling and consistently, or they smell, or they're not keeping themselves their hygiene up. So, you know, I go in and I'm looking at not quite a hoarding situation, but filthy apartments, houses, they can't walk up or down their stairs. So I go in and try to hook them up with services, or get them help, or get them to the hospital. I had one recently where a person was falling and calling for help, and fire department would help them, and by the time I got a report and got in there, they could barely walk, and I wound up having to have them ambulance called and take them to the hospital, where they got admitted and stayed for almost a week. But that's kind of the typical self-neglect, is that they're not eating, they're they're not going to their doctor's appointments. They're lonely, they don't have a lot of family or connections, so there's nobody checking up on them. So that's kind of the general, kind of common self-neglect that I see.
Okay, so anyway, they've been busy. So we have our World Elder Abuse Awareness Day workshop coming up on Thursday, and I know you have all seen the agenda for that. We are asking if you would read the proclamation and sign it, and then we will have this on display on Thursday at our workshop.
All right.
So you have one over
I
there?
have a copy of
We
it.
want you to sign a nice one.
Oh, sure. All
If you
right.
would read that.
All right, well, we'll read this proclamation here, and it's World Elder Abuse Awareness Day Proclamation of Clay County. Whereas Wednesday, June 15th, 2017 is World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. Whereas the U.S. Administration on Aging estimates that as many as 1 in 10 older Americans are abused or neglected each year. Whereas elder abuse can be financial, emotional, physical, and sexual. It also includes people who are neglected and those who neglect themselves. Whereas we are all responsible for building safer communities by watching for and reporting possible abuse or neglect to the Minnesota Adult Abuse Reporting Center at phone number 844-880-1574. Whereas the Clay Cass Coordinated Community Response Team's vision is to create a community in which people in later life can live in safety with dignity and respect. Whereas the Clay Cass Coordinated Community Response Team will hold an event on Thursday, June 8th, 2017 in observance of World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. Now therefore, in recognition of the World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, we, the Commissioners of Clay County, proclaim the 8th day of June, 2017 as Elder Abuse Awareness Day in Clay County and encourage all our county citizens to recognize, report, and protect vulnerable adults from abuse and neglect.
Thank you.
And we have a motion to,
Yes, I will make that
All
motion
right.
to approve that.
Second.
and we have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carried.
Thank you very much for the work that you do.
What's that?
He feels abused.
That abuse does not apply to you.
Having a coffee break for 5 minutes.
Okay, all right. Okay, so we're slightly ahead of schedule, so we're going to take a 5-minute break here. All right, so we'll reconvene our meeting here, and we'll move on to our 9:15 public hearing. And this is an appeal from William Henning.
I'll make a motion to open the appeal.
All right.
Public hearing.
We have a motion to open the hearing in a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same, motion carried. And again, this is an appeal of the Planning Commission's decision to issue a permit for aggregate mining operations. Mr. Magnuson, we'll start with
Mr.
you.
Chair, thank you very much.
Good morning.
Commissioners, good morning. I've got a PowerPoint here that will give you a little bit of background on this before Mr. Henning comes up. At the April meeting, we heard a number of requests on this particular piece of property. One of them being a platted subdivision, and then at the very end of our meeting, we heard the request for the mining operation. So we'll start here. This is the general area. The property in question is down here. I've got a different slide of this coming up. But this was for the plat that came before the final request. So that there was a 9-lot, actually a 10-lot plat. There's 9 lots in the bottom, 1 lot up here. That was heard by the Planning Commission and was approved for recommendation of the county board for approval. So in that parcel, there are now 10 lots platted. So that was heard. which means there is a lot of remaining area in here left unplatted, although there is a proposal in the end to have something similar to this. There'll be an area here that's not available for platting because of a setback from a feedlot. But there is a proposal, or there is thought that somewhere down the road there'll be additional platting of that property. So after that approval was given, they they requested for a gravel mining permit for the remainder of the property. The areas that they're interested in mining are the areas where there are no trees. Since this may be platted in the future, they want to retain as many trees as possible. So the intent was to mine areas where there are no trees, or few trees. If the mining is approved, there's setback requirements for mining, 200 feet from this roadway, 100 feet from any property line, so you'd have a 100-foot buffer along this edge and this edge. And depending on exactly what the measurements are, they would need to be 500 feet from this residence right here. I think as I measured it, if they've got a 100-foot setback in here, they are pretty darn close to a 500-foot setback from that. So anyway, that went through the Planning Commission's process, and it was approved. What you're going to hear today, I'm sure, is some of the same testimony that we heard then, relative, not in favor of the mining process. If you're familiar with this area, this is the landfill road right here. This is what's known as Boughton's Addition. It's not a platted subdivision. Jack Boughton took it as far as he could, but did never plat it. So we've got almost all of these parcels here are developed. We've got 12th Avenue here that comes through as the road that comes past the subdivision now, and this property proposed for mining. It is a no-maintenance road at the present time. Houses on the west end of it here, 3 of them, a house right here on the east end. The mining proposal is proposing to utilize 12th Avenue and then 200th Street up to Highway 10 up here. So there's 3 houses along 200th here, there's one right down here. And the wish at the time was that the traffic not go this way because this piece of road is not really a road, should be utilized for that kind of traffic. So, and this is probably the most recent aerial photo that's available from Google Earth. You can see all of the development over here. The 3 parties down here, 1 here, 2 new ones down here, and then there's a couple over here, and the 3 that are out along the 200th. Within that area, well, all of these non-platted and platted parcels, there's about 100 lots that are either platted or developed into residential use in the area. That's a real quick overview. The Planning Commission did approve it. The appeal is in front of you today because of that approval. And I know that Mr. Henning is here, so.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, can I go through the legal criteria so you could have that in mind as you hear the testimony from the public hearing?
Yes, please do.
Thank you. Both at the FD Planning Commission and at this stage of appeal for the county board, the criteria for consideration of this kind of request, this would be a request for an interim use permit. And so the criteria to consider, anybody that's considering the request or the appeal would need to consider 13 enumerated considerations that are in our county ordinance, Title 8, Chapter 4, Section 7C.
They are also in your packet as the back page of the staff report.
Well, thank you, Tim. So just in considering the evidence and the opinions of the folks that will be speaking today, under C, number 1, effect of use. Number 2, use and enjoyment of other property. 3, development of surrounding property.
4, utilities, access roads, drainage, off-street parking and loading spaces. 5, nuisance conditions. 6, burden on public services. 7, compatibility. 8, appearance of structure and site. 9, relationship to overall needs. 10, consistency with ordinance. 11, conflict with comprehensive plans. 12, traffic hazards, congestion in floodplain areas. And 13, existing businesses. So there's not a magic formula, there's not a requirement that you find X number of these, or if you find one that it negates the application, anything like that. It's just really a balancing test, and the ordinance is pointing to the things that should be considered. So I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention before we started hearing from the parties, so that you can keep those things in mind as you listen. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jenny. Okay, Mr. Henning? And then again, if when you come up to speak, if you can please state your name and address. We are in a public hearing.
Good morning. My name is Bill Henning. My wife Bev and I live on 266 200th Street South, where Mr. Magnuson is pointing his arrow. I was asked by a number of our neighborhood folks if I would initiate this appeal on behalf of those of us who live in this rural area. I and other residents in the area of the recently approved gravel mining operation are asking the board to reconsider the County Planning Commission's decision, and that you rescind the interim use permit granted to Great Basin Incorporated. We firmly believe that the mining operation will have adverse effects on our township's roadway and on nearby properties. The county's comprehensive plan and land development code were adopted to address and minimize potential adverse effects of land use. In this case, we believe granting Great Basin a permit to mine gravel was inappropriate, as such use is inconsistent with the existing and anticipated residential property use of the area. The designated mining site lies within an area of numerous existing homes, many of which have existed for decades. The Mountain Addition, one of the Clay County's largest housing subdivision, is immediately north of, while the Henry, Murray, Wiebe, and Thompson homes abut the proposed mine to the east and west. The Henry Estate subdivision also lies just east of the mining site. Its residents, along with other residential and dairy farm properties, utilize the planned gravel mine haul route 200th Street South as their means of access. This is also a planned primary access route to the newly approved Bison Ridge subdivision. The nuisance conditions created by gravel mining, noise, dust, fumes, excessive truck traffic will adversely affect use and enjoyment of existing properties and may well impact development of the surrounding property, including the recently approved Henry Estates subdivision. Great Basin will argue that the gravel mine will be in compliance with the 500-foot residential setback from a mining operation prescribed by the Land Development Code. That setback distance may well be reasonable where a single or a couple of homes exist, but we believe the board needs to look beyond this minimal setback requirement where the mining operation will impact a large number of nearby residential properties. Consideration must also be given to the negative adverse effects hauling thousands of loads of gravel will have on the township's road, the residents who use that road, and the potential for traffic hazards and congestion. As you're likely aware, permits to mine this area were denied by the county in 2000 and 2006 and by Hawley Township in 2011. This was in large part due to the anticipated adverse effects a gravel mining operation would have on residents, existing properties, and roadways. The record will reflect the substantial opposition of numerous residents who attended those meetings, It's for many of these same reasons that the board should now rescind this mining permit. Great Basin and Nugget Investments have argued that these past denials have deprived them the use of their property. To the contrary, no reasonable person or corporation should consider the creation of a gravel mine immediately adjacent to an area as densely populated as the Boughton Addition and other nearby properties as a reasonable use of their property. Also bear in mind that Grace Basin's plat for a major subdivision located on a minimum maintenance road was approved. Denying the request to mine gravel on a small portion of the same property is entirely reasonable. It's also very important to remember that Great Basin sought and was granted its request for removal of the Resource Protection Aggregate Overlay Zone from the subject property to avoid housing density restrictions so it could develop a major rural subdivision. Then, after receiving the Planning Commission's approval of the subdivision plat, Great Basin sought and received approval of the permit for aggregate mining on the same property from which the resource protection overlay had just been removed. This quite simply is not equitable. In summary, a gravel mining operation in this area is not in harmony with the existing and anticipated land uses, and therefore the previously granted, the permit previously granted by the Planning Commission should be revoked. Thank you.
Okay, do we have anybody from Great Basin here? I believe we do. Sure. Would you like to speak? Okay.
Thank you. Raymond Redding, 617 Valley Street, Holly, Minnesota. Yeah, one thing that was neglected to point out is actually what is existing for the land use in the area. If I can show you, I actually printed off to show what other permitted sites are, you know, so you can see actually the overlay and all. Can I step up?
Yes, you're welcome, yeah. Please do.
Okay. I'll pass this around. This here shows the Boughton Addition and where our permit, active permit is right now that's permitted. And it shows you other mining operations that are currently in place that are next to other subdivisions already current in place. And the travel routes for these other mining, including your county landfill, runs right next adjacent to the Boughton Addition. And actually our proposal is to go away from that subdivision completely. We're going the opposite direction. And the intersection where 200th Street goes out to.
So are you saying that these blue areas here are permitted?
Yep, gravel areas.
Okay.
Yep, that are currently in place. So it does, and they're really close to this property, so it does fall into what's going on out in our area. Also, this is the intersection for 200 that shows all the turning lanes and the through intersection. That is up to county standards for the township road. And it shows in good standing. And this is just a closer view of all those areas, including the other permitted area for gravel that's right next to the two other housing subdivisions. That is right 10 times the size of what ours would be, and lies right next to it. The unique factors with that other actual pit that you see that is probably 10 times the size of ours is that there are no trees between those homes and that pit.
Mr. Wright, are you submitting these then as part of the hearing?
Correct.
So
if I could, please.
We will keep these then
Yep.
as part of our...
Absolutely, I appreciate that. So I just didn't have it, and Mr. Magnuson didn't show how the other permitted areas were there. I wanted to make sure you understood that. Thank you so much.
Right.
So the other limiting factors, like I was talking about, is the other permitted pit that is north of it, that's right adjacent to all those other homes. I mean, it's just open field between them. There's nothing between it at all. With ours, you can see here, with all the vegetation, the dense vegetation, these folks can't even come close to even seeing any part of this property. And the elevation change is huge. I'm talking probably 30 feet drop minimum probably from here to down here, where you can't even see it. You know, and we're leaving all the trees in place to provide that natural buffer between all these areas. And if you look at the maps I sent you, there are no buffers with the other permitted gravel pits in those areas. Another part of the comprehensive plan that I saw and pointed out is gravel is a limited resource within our county. And it is a limited resource with the fact that the uniqueness of our property here with this is that there is no native prairie here. There is no protected species here that lie below it. And we know that being a non-renewable resource, there's other areas within our county that maybe there are gravel, but we can't touch them because of the protection that lies in place. Well, with this property here, there is none of that. This is a disturbed area that was actually all used for gravel in the past. And we look at the positives of taking the gravel from this area, decreases our haul route to the surrounding communities for projects that are coming up here in the future, which reduces the overall cost to those projects, which helps increase, or it helps the tax base and helps the taxpayers out to have less money and saves thousands of people money. Not only that, as you probably well know, that the taxation that is accrued from taking out the aggregate benefits our county, and 60% of those taxes actually goes to road improvements, which is a huge asset to our community and helps thousands of our residents and our whole county in general. So I think that covers pretty much everything on our part, just to know that it was approved by the Planning Commission on a majority vote of 8-2, and that we are following all the rules and regulations and ordinances set in place that are with the county. And we have, this permit is actually a limited permit, and it's only operating from June through October, Monday through Friday, from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. So it's not a 24-hour deal, and it's very limited. And we are working on dust control for everything that's in the permit. Not only that, if any roads are damaged, we will be paying for the improvement of those roads to get them back in compliance and do the right thing. So, thank you for your time.
Okay, well, at this point, we can open up to any others that might like to be heard. If you would go to the microphone and state your name and address. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jerry Wyatt. Address is Holiday Drive. I'm with Agrid Industries. Looking at that and looking at that mine site, it was mentioned that it's limited material. We have other mine sites in that area to supply the needs. And the only thing that I would request in behalf of myself and Agrid Industries is a consideration of a full impact study, environmental impact study, and also reclamation. We are seeing small pits being established and put in and then moving out. For best practices of mining and for the mining industry, I would request the commissioner could at least consider that environmental impact study be done on it, a hazard identification because the housing areas, and also a reclamation program implemented within the interim permit before the permit is issued.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tim, was there anything, any conditions by the Planning Commission that would have, I think of the reclamation issue, do we have that as part of our ordinance anyway? That
We generally require a bond for reclamation.
It's condition number 8. I think the board has that report.
You should have a copy of the permit.
So it's on the left hand.
Oh, yeah, okay. Require applicant to provide 530-acre reclamation bond, okay. Okay. Do we have any other folks who wish to speak? And by the way, this morning as you came in here, you probably noticed we have some activity going on around our campus here, and we apologize for any inconvenience if you had trouble finding a place to park. Hopefully this will be a quick process and we'll get things in order so it's more convenient for you as the citizens to come in. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you. Okay.
Hi. Excuse me. My name is Claudia Murray. I live right next to where Tim's pointing. And I do oppose the gravel pit mining. One of the things I wanted to speak to was what Mr. Redding said in regards to other pits that are in the area. I haven't seen the paperwork that he passed around, but I am familiar with a couple of the pits in the area. One being just down the road on Landfill Road. However, I don't think that one's actually in use anymore. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my understanding. And then there's another one on Larry Henry's property that he uses, but he is only allowed to use that one for his addition. So again, that's very limited. And once his addition is done, that mining will be done as well. So I just kind of want to point that out. And Another thing that was mentioned was he was talking about how the pits that are in the area are not always visible, and that may be true, but it's not just the visibility of them, it's also what you're hearing. Kind of like what we're hearing right now with the construction outside. You can hear the gravel sounds and things that are going on with it. So there is that partial nuisance as well. And that's all I have to say. Did you have any questions? Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak for or against the project?
Paul Weeby, 19184 12th Avenue on the west end of the Muscatine Road. I guess I just want to echo that I think a lot of the pits that were mentioned, I think they aren't active pits. I know the Johnson pit, which is right south of the railroad tracks, that hasn't been used for years and it's not going to be used. And I don't know where the other pits were located. We weren't privy to the information, but I can't think of any pits that are close by. Also, I think if you look around the county, just about all the gravel pits in Clay County are on county roads. And the county roads are used for access to get in. The only one exception I know, which is on way north, and that pit hasn't been used for 4 years, as far as I know, but that's on a gravel road, and it's a 1 mile section, and there's no houses on that section of road. And the main reason I guess it was denied, like they mentioned, is it's a township road. 200th Street is a narrow township road, and to put gravel trucks on there, plus having the housing development with the people, I just don't think that's a good option at all. And I know what gravel, I'm a rural mail carrier, so I know what gravel trucks do to a road. I put up with it and do the repairs on my car when I drive on the roads that gravel trucks drive on, with the dust and the way, and if you get any rain after the gravel trucks are on there, I mean, it's just, the roads are almost impassable. And now those are county roads, not a township road. And that township road, as far as I know, is only a 5-ton road. And so you're pretty much peaking the road with an empty gravel truck. A loaded gravel truck's going to be way overloaded on that road. I just don't think it's a good option. And then having, housing and gravel, and having a gravel pit within 500 feet of a residence, I just don't think that's a good option. So, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Mojo.
I just want to clarify, I think the map that went around, if I recall, the one south of the landfill is the Deutscher pit that Fitzgerald's are hauling out of, correct?
Right, there's 3 pits around the intersection of County 12 and the landfill road down there. One is run by Asplin. I'm not sure if it was in the other one. The other one is Brad Fitzgerald out of the Deutscher pit. Those are all active pits. The pit that's up here in proximity to there's 2 subdivisions up here, that pit has been in business for a long, long time, so it pre-existed any of the subdivisions.
Very good. And we'll need those back then for. Okay, next. Good morning.
Morning. My name's Rod Heft. I'm at 647 192nd Street. I just want to remind, and Mr. Gross, you had mentioned the last meeting we had that this is no longer a rural setting, it's an urban setting. So I would just ask all of you to kind of put yourselves as, instead of a Clay County commissioner, as a Dilworth City Councilor, a Sabin City Councilor, a Comstock City Council. Would you ever consider opening a gravel pit on the same section of land as your city sits? You would never consider it. And that's really what we have. And I know those other pits, and last night I was out having a fire and I smelled Lewis's cows. But you know what? Lewis's have been there forever, at least as far as I know. They were there well before that. That pit over there by the Jetvig addition, which I'm assuming that's one of them on Highway 10, there's one on the other side of Hawley. That pit was open there well before the Jetvig addition was put across Highway 10. But you got 80 houses here that are pretty much a small town in Clay County. No city commission that for any reason that I can imagine, would open a gravel pit
basically on the same section of land as 80 houses. That's all I have.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak for or against?
Hi.
Good morning.
I'm Chris Gaida, and I'm 634 192nd Street South, and for 30 years, I lived at 608 192nd Street South, and now I've lived for 11 years at 634. And I think that you really need to consider strongly the number 2 thing about the use and enjoyment of other property. You just got done saying there's over 100 houses here. I added up my property taxes from the last 10 years. I've paid over $33,000 myself to enjoy my property on that spot. Then you add all of these other, every single other house in yellow. All of them are pretty decent high-end homes. We do contribute a lot to allow us to enjoy our own property. So I think that as far as the pit, I'm against it totally, and I think you have to strongly consider our rights to enjoy our property that we paid for 41 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes. Yes, please, you feel free.
One thing I forgot to mention is we have to improve the township road to meet county standards anyways, which the township road on 200th already meets county standards because we're doing snow removal on it. But we have to be bringing either gravel into there to create the road, or we can take gravel that's from within to create the road and have less traffic going on 200th Street. So either way, there's gonna be gravel trucks going up and down that road.
While you're building the road.
Yeah, correct. So, and we can take that resource from what's adjacent there to help save for the rest of the county, or bring it from other places brought in, so, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other people wish to speak? Sure. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Doug Keeping. I'm 99 200 Street South. I'm right by the highway there. Like Keith says and everything there and stuff, that there would be gravel trucks coming in and out because of that. When I built my house on mine and everything there, I never had one load of gravel hauled in because all the gravel was right there when they dug the basement out. So the gravel that's in that would probably be used, that each house is on there because there's gravel underneath that and everything there. And so I'm against the gravel deal coming out of there myself and everything because of the road and stuff going in. I'm close and everything. These other people are back further and everything. They're having to get in and out and go to work and stuff and everything. So that's all I got to say.
All right, thank you. Any other comments? Any other comments while the hearing is still open?
Good morning, Steve Rams, Great Basin, Fertile, Minnesota. One other thing to make sure that you're aware of is that this area here, the proposed mining area, if you were to drive your vehicle down there and look in any given direction, all you will see is trees. And the buffer zone of that, the people to the north, a half a mile or quarter mile, are not going to hear, I would say, very little, if any, noise at all. And it's a very limited time that we can do that. I mean, we're pretty restricted on that. So I guess as long as we stay within compliance of the regulations and we don't go outside of them boundaries, I really see that there's no reason to deny that permit.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any others who wish to speak? If not, we will be closing the hearing. So if anybody else would like to speak, now is the time.
I'll make a motion to close the hearing.
We have a motion to close. And a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carried. So at this point, we're going to probably get into a little bit of dialogue amongst our commissioners here. And I do want to point out that Commissioner Wayland is out of state today on other business, and depending on how this goes here, I may ask this board to consider holding off on a vote. Obviously, if it's appears that this board is 100% in one direction or not right now, then there's no need to delay it. But if we would be looking at a potential split vote or something, then I would certainly want, and Commissioner Whalen would also like to review this hearing and then be part of it. So just throwing that out there just to see where this dialogue takes us today. So who would like to start?
Well, my first question is to Tim. The gravel that's there, say that the permit's denied, could he utilize the gravel that's there to build up that road for his own personal use?
That could probably be done as long as it wasn't being sold on a commercial basis.
Okay.
Any other comments?
I just want to follow up on that. That was referenced earlier that in the other subdivision, the
Henry subdivision?
The pit there is.
I'm not familiar with that, so. Okay. I mean, I've never heard anything relative to any agreement that way, but.
I want to make a few comments here myself, and I am a real supporter of the need to protect our aggregate resources. That's something I've been talking about for a long time. When we see other parts of the state, in metropolitan areas, for example, where they elected to build over all of those resources, now they have, you talk about a financial burden. It's a huge financial burden to move and have to bring in those resources from other areas. Having said that, now we do have an issue here because we are so close to developed areas, and being a township officer before this and being involved, there are many complaints about truck traffic in areas, and I have real concern in this area. There's common sense would say that we shouldn't be having those kind of trucks going where there's that kind of development, and sometimes I'm going in a way against what I think in terms of the resources, but fortunately for Clay County, we do have that ridge that does have a lot of gravel. But if we keep doing this, I think it's going to be important for whatever the Planning Commission does in developments like this in the future, that we be looking closely at the resources underneath it before we allow development on top of it. So having said that, I am not going to support the Planning Commission's decision on this. I just think that even though it's an important resource, I just don't think we should be allowing that to be mined at this point.
Well, you're speaking about covering a resource, you know. I look at the rest of right around Fargo Moorhead. Talk about a black gold being covered up by pavement and concrete.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've been doing that now for years. As Fargo Moorhead is expanding, well, I guess we're concerned about Moorhead, you know, but Moorhead's covered up a lot of black dirt already. Fargo's covered up a lot of black dirt. So yes, that is a resource. So is black dirt, you know, and it's not being available. Just to get this thing going, I'm going to make a motion to deny it from it.
Okay. Do we have a second to the motion?
I'll second the motion for the discussion purposes.
Okay. And if I can, does that motion, Jenny Smarsh, does that need to, do we need to point out findings to deny that based on these 13? Do we have to emphasize any of these?
Certainly we have to consider them. At the Planning Commission level, we formally go through them point by point. Nowhere is that explicitly required in the law, but just a general consideration of those elements, certainly within discussion purposes, would be sufficient.
Okay. Well, if I can, I certainly think the item number 2 is of concern. Item number 3 is of concern.
One?
Yeah, 1 is a concern. 5 is a concern. 6, again, it can be looking at what it does to roads. Compatibility. 7 is a concern. So those are ones that I certainly point out.
8 is to appearance of structure. So.
Right, yeah. So, so we do have a motion and a second, and any other comments that any commissioners like to make? Seeing none, at this point then we will, because we do have a motion and a second, we will vote on this today. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. All right, this permit application has been denied by the board. It's been rescinded.
I want to clarify, though, the comments by Frank. Can a resident or a landowner use their own resource to build up that road? Because part of what went into approving the subdivision was the understanding that the applicant had a resource to cover that road. I mean, that really was part of the dialogue, that the gravel permit had been issued, and that's an enormous cost to build up that road, and so,
Sure.
I mean, it just...
Well, I agree. That's why I checked to see whether he could do that, because I think he should be able to utilize his resources.
I would say property owners can use material on their land for driveways, whatever, their own, on their own property. I don't see how this would be much different than that. It is considered a public cartway and will be developed to public road specs.
Well, and again, I think, and I think even for all the people who are opposed to seeing the gravel trucks and everything, I think common sense is, the fact of the matter is the development was approved, so the development's gonna be done. And so they're either gonna bring the gravel in all the way down, up and down those big streets, or they're gonna take it from that area. So I would assume that all these residents would at least be favorable to allowing that road be built with the material that's on site, as opposed to be trucking it. And if we can't find anything within our ordinance that would not give them that right, then I would say they should be allowed to do that. I don't know, Tim, you're the one who would know those ordinances on that, so.
I guess I'd have to look for sure, but I don't think it would preclude a property owner utilizing material from their own site.
For you folks, when you go to build that new road, why don't you work with Tim and make sure that we have everything covered, and if need be, then they'll have to come back and seek some permission through whatever means would be. All right, that's it. That's it on the hearing. The motion has been denied, or the permit has been denied.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tim. All right, we'll let this, the next thing we have here is the discussion. I think Brian is going to probably come over here. Yep, okay. It was rescinded?
Denied appeal. Should have. Just to approve the appeal.
Well,
Because you said deny the permit, but you said deny the appeal.
No, we can still clarify.
No problem.
I think we know what the intent is.
Yeah.
We have to correct the wording, we'll correct the wording.
He said deny the permit, right?
Yeah.
But do you need to, it's not the permit on the table, it's the appeal.
The appeal is on the permit, though. You're appealing the decision on the permit, and the board has carte blanche ability to grant or deny the permit.
I just didn't want,
Yeah.
that's what the intent is, so perhaps.
Do we need to reword our motion?
Reword the motion.
I don't know what it would be reworded as. To grant the appeal and deny the permit?
Correct.
I mean, if you want to be,
Lays it out pretty s-
if you want to be ultra sure that it's clear,
We-
but
we
I think
can-
it,
If that's the case, we could rescind the previous motion and just reword it.
clear.
I think we're okay, but it's,
Maybe you should just allow her a few minutes to think it through as far as wording.
Well, I think that's the only other option, though.
Oh, okay.
I mean, the option is leave it as it is, which I think is clear, but the more specific wording would be to grant the appeal and deny the permit.
Well, didn't we
Deny
grant,
or
did we grant the appeal when we allowed them to come forward to the commission?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
We agreed to hear the appeal.
Well, state it that way. We agreed to hear the appeal, but you denied the permit for the gravel permit.
I think it's clear the way it is, and I would say let's keep it the way it is.
we clearly denied the request for the permit.
Yeah.
And it's, I
Which
think,
overturned the approval of it by the
Right.
planning commission.
Because
the appeal,
it's full
the
review.
appeal was the appeal of the planning commission's decision, which was a permit decision.
I'm just saying, if there's any gray area, then why don't we just read?
Yeah.
If that would make it
We certainly
absolutely
can,
clear.
Frank, if you're willing to,
I'm willing to make it right, you know, I think we already got it right, but
So,
I'm willing
so I think then we'd have to rescind the previous motion and redo it.
or just, okay.
make an additional motion.
Yeah. So,
Okay, I'll make an additional motion that we're gonna grant the appeal and deny the permit.
there we go. All right,
My second motion,
All right.
reflect that.
all right. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same, motion carried. All right, so
Thank
that's
you.
done. All right. So Brian, you want to have a chair here, and we're going to talk about the process that remains for the enactment of the sales tax.
Oh, sure.
Then you're going to,
Sure, let me see how you.
just remember, it's elder abuse. So
I
don't-
know, I have to be careful what I say.
Don't be elbowing him.
Well, and one thing that the panel didn't indicate to you was,
All of us.
in terms of the grant that supports the elder abuse work here in Clay County, elder is defined as anyone over the age of 55.
Well, I'm a long ways over that.
So,
We'll take care of you guys.
but anyway, when I first heard that, because I worked on the initial grant that was brought to Clay County for elder abuse, and when I heard 55, oof, that seems pretty young to be
It-
considered an elder.
Yeah. It seems young, but unfortunately, people
You get
start
the
having
10%
problems.
discount.
So anyway, sorry.
All right, so let's talk about the processes we need to go
Yeah,
through.
we'll change the process. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. You folks are very well aware, and the public is well aware, that the voters of Clay County passed a referendum for a half-cent sales tax to help pay for the new correctional facility and law enforcement facility that are in the process of being constructed. And of course, the action then had to gain the approval of the state legislature, and you know, Mr. Chair, you were down to testify on it on more than one occasion, I believe. We had to testify in both houses anyway. And the bill was approved by the state legislature, so now we've been in contact with the Department of Revenue and the Secretary of State's office, because there's some procedural things that still need to take place. And I shouldn't say we have been, I did say we have, but Jenny and I have both been in contact with them, because we certainly want to get this right. And now what the legislation states is that the county needs to now pass an ordinance enacting the half-cent sales tax. So what Ms. Maraja is doing is she was notifying the paper as of today, then June 8th is a deadline for the public announcement to go into the paper. And then with your blessings, she is scheduling the public hearing at 9:30. I have 9:15 on the information, but it was 9:30 on the announcement, authorizing the approval of the ordinance, that you will then have to hold the hearing and hopefully authorize if your wishes are.
And that's the 9:30 and what date?
20th of June.
Okay, all right.
So that's really kind of the big step, and then we need to, and I've got kind of the schedule here, then we need to notify the Secretary of State of all of the approving documents and the different things, and Jenny and I have been talking about that as well, to make sure we have everything in order, because we have to certify with the Secretary of State, then we have to get that information to the Department of Revenue by the end of June, June
Yes.
30th, in order for it
That
to
90
be enacted
days.
by October
October
1st, 90 days ahead of time. So what we'd like to see today, and certainly add in anything, but what we'd like to see today is your support and approval of this timeline.
Okay. And we had actually moved to set the public hearing too today, right?
Yes, and that publication would, or the notice would go to the paper today for publication on Thursday.
Okay. So do we have a motion to set the public hearing
So moved.
for 9:30 June 20th? All right. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carried. All right. And then so then we're touching base with, is it Penny, right?
Yes.
To make sure that all.
She's
of the-
Department of Revenue, yes. And we will send the wordage to her and things as well, so.
Yeah, once we get the ordinance finalized, we will send it to her. And then there's also another form that we have to complete for the Secretary of State. That is accompanied by our resolution that was passed a while back, and history of that, as well as this kind of certification of the votes and those kind of things. So
Right.
that packet all has to be assembled and go to the Secretary of State, but we're running everything through Penny because she is our local expert on that, so.
And I would assume that they have, they even have similar ordinances that have been approved, that you could see their language on.
Yes. Yep, that's what we're working off of currently. Ours, of course, is a little different. It's got some, unique features to it that other sales and use taxes might not. But the ordinance is easily crafted in line with what's previously been passed by other cities or municipalities.
Yeah, mostly it's been cities,
Yep.
Mr. Chair, that have passed these.
I have a question about the form that filing the tax is going to take. At current time, there's a state website that you file your state sales tax every month with. And that automatically calculates the 6.875% for the sales tax every month. Will that then be initiated automatically onto the state website on behalf of Clay County by the state of Minnesota, so that any business that files tax that's situated within Clay County will have that tax rate automatically calculated? Is that how it goes?
Yes, it'll work the same way as, if like a city, for example, if the city of Moorhead or the city of Detroit Lakes had a half-cent sales tax or something, it does show up right on that website. You fill in your line.
Department of Revenue.
Yeah, you fill in your line item and then it, you could potentially have, in some instances, you could potentially have a different taxable amount for state than you might have for your local, because You know, for example, in Fargo, when Fargo did it, one of their sales taxes, they limited sales tax on certain product. Minnesota, we don't have that, but, you know, some municipalities might have the ability to not tax certain things. So you could end up having a different number, but it should be right on there when you go to do your.
In fact, Mr. Chair and Commissioner Haney, when Commissioner Campbell and myself visited with the Department of Revenue, they were very specific in pointing out that this is still under the state tax collection authority. That's why it has to go through the legislature. They administer it. They decide what it applies to, not us. The exemption would, I mean, it was really complicated if you were to go with just a county tax and exempt certain things. So she was very specific that this is now part of the state tax collection, and that in fact they'll charge us a little fee to administer that. So it'll come through the same process as how you're paying state tax right now.
Okay, but my question is, will there be a separate line that you have to calculate the tax for this versus what you owe for the state, or will the state automatically increase the amount to 7 3/8%?
Well, I guess probably none of us in this room can say absolutely.
It will be one or the other.
But yes.
You know, it'll be clear on there that.
It will be clear,
okay.
Yes. Yeah, they will process that, and they don't make the notification. I'm assuming that it will be all in one.
I hope it is. It's cumbersome to do it in North Dakota with all the different jurisdictions that have different criteria and all that we have to go through.
Yeah, I'm very certain it's all in one, and then they separate it out when they send it back, because certain things apply and certain things don't.
That would be the best possible way. Yeah.
Good.
And they'll, that's our understanding too, based on our meetings in St. Paul, that they will be notifying every vendor of what the process is. So.
Absolutely.
Good.
Yeah, and they talked about the website for it too, just like you talked about when we sent back that information. You talked about going to the website to handle that. So let's.
Yeah, because now you enter your gross sales and it calculates it all for you automatically.
Yeah, it should do that for you.
Okay.
And I think that's why they want to have the control on it with state approval and different things, because we are a subdivision again of
See, and depending on each business, it's going to be different as to when they file. It's how much business you do. For example, if your receipts exceed a certain dollar amount, or your taxes collected exceed a certain amount, you oftentimes have to report weekly as opposed to monthly.
Oh, didn't know that.
Yeah, so there's some retailers who will be submitting their tax collections on a weekly basis.
Okay.
Interesting. Good to know.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Okay, these microphones are really loud today.
I know.
We'll go into our committee reports, and we do have 2 weeks to do, so Frank, you want to start this morning?
Sure. I guess on May 25th, we had a correctional facility behavioral health subcommittee meeting. At that point, we had Rebecca, a professor, I think, from the University of Minnesota. I think she was talking about children of incarcerated parents. Very interesting that presentation that she gave, about a half hour, 45 minutes, on how many of our people that are in prison. You know, that in Minnesota, there's 66% of the men that are in prison have children that need taken care of, either by the spouse or whatever. But sometimes the county has to take care of them. And 77% of the women that are incarcerated have children. So it's a big amount. And she was talking about how these children have to be taken care of and stuff like that. Interesting discussion there that she gave us on what needs to be done by the county to help these children out. You know, what are we going to do for all these children that have parents in prison? I mean, a lot of times these parents go to different members of the family, relatives, and foster homes. So Friday, excuse me, that wasn't on the 25th, that was on the June 2nd meeting, I guess. I went up to Ada for Agassiz Recreation Trails. There's just finalizing everything on what's going on the trail. There was notice that there was one accident in Clay County. We got 5 miles of trail of that, and everything's going okay. That each county's taking care of their own trail, and everything's going all right in that. Last night, as I discussed before, Dave and Eric and I went up to Hewlin Township to discuss a bridge that they have. We were going to eliminate, and we had this good discussion with the township officers there, and they decided to look at some different options. Those are the meetings that.
Jenny, let's go to you.
Sorry. Thank you. Last 2 weeks ago, I attended the land management meeting of the Diversion Authority, and the land in Clay County that will be auctioned off, that was a hardship buyout, will be auctioned off the end of the month. And we also had some discussion in terms of development in the diversion footprint in North Dakota and how that may adversely affect buyouts going forward, and a discussion ensued. And because of the discussion that happened, my phone has been ringing off the hook, and I want to clarify that Clay County does not currently have a ordinance that limits development south of Rusted. That's the word that people thought they heard. So that's not something that has happened. It's something that in the future we'll have some discussion on if that's appropriate at this time or not. But I don't have my packet, so I think Kevin can report any further on that meeting. I attended the Lakes and Prairies meeting also, where we discussed the Wilkin County did their food drop, and it's interesting to note that 242 households accessed food through that, and basically the qualifications are if you can eat, you are qualified. And the numbers in Wilkin County very closely resemble Clay County, I believe. There were 35 households in Rothsay, 46 in Campbell. I would venture to say there's not a whole lot more than 46 households in Campbell, so food is, there are some food needs. Senator Franken's office sent Carson Ouellette to the meeting also to talk a little bit because Head Start funding has been a point of elimination of the new administration's budget. I will also pass around our annual report that Lakes and Prairies did, and just a few things to note that Rainbow Bridge, which is a program that supplies supervised training for custody transfers, provided 1,152 safe exchanges in Clay County last year and 1,200 supervised visits. They're also doing some great things with 92% of their Head Start children going to kindergarten and exceeding the benchmarks. So clearly what they're doing is very valuable, and you can look at the rest of that. I'll just hand that around if you'd like. And we also approved several very large grant applications, including the Head Start grant application, which, if I might fast forward a little bit to my next meeting, the Behavioral Health Subcommittee. One interesting point that was discussed is that 34% of the kids in Clay County Head Start have a parent that is incarcerated or has been incarcerated. And so as we look to how an expanding jail population has affected all different areas of our county, that's one that's quite significant, I think. Commissioner Gross did a good update on what's going on with that committee. We're in the process. We've identified some pretty key services that will be beneficial in the new jail, but as we know, they come at a cost, and so we're in the process of collaborating and seeing how best to fund them. We will be having some more meetings in June to discuss further with Lakeland Mental Health. There's a few things that need to be ironed out in terms of providing more service, psychiatry services, and where that person will locate.
Jenny, can I interrupt just for a minute? This goes to something that if we can really focus on that and try to get some of those numbers, it's something that I I know we had expressed or had some discussions with our legislatures about the programming component of this potentially being something that maybe we could get some financial assistance on, as it would be good for the entire state down the road. But we need to start getting that to them early on in this
Well, if I were
process.
to just look at the three that maybe are at the top, I think we're looking at $145,000 that would address those key top three issues, and we are looking at grant dollars. We have some amazing grant writers in Clay County, but you're right, it really, because it's, if we're gonna say that Clay County is really trying to address the mental health needs in people in correctional facilities, we really should be proactively telling people what we're doing.
Okay, very good. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's fine. And the other thing is that this is probably, I think, one of the most exciting things that has come out of this committee is the CIT, the training that will be offered for the officers. We have a significant amount of jail staff that will be attending this next week, and by this fall, there will also be an opportunity to do that, and I think Julie's really excited about what that means, so more to come.
Will that be an ongoing for new staff then to the?
Well, surely the need for the training will be ongoing, but because we're training a large amount of staff, I don't know if we would be able to secure a grant to host it, but I think as counties are becoming more aware that this is a very valuable training, it may be offered statewide.
Commissioner Mojo, was there an opportunity to bring this to Fergus Falls later? So in addition to the current training, there will be another
Otter Tail,
one?
is it the fall? Otter Tail will be doing it, and they are also working with their social services department to kind of collaborate on that, so.
And the thought there was that might be very advantageous with jail staff, as the new jail is staffed. That fall training may be very valuable, so.
Good, okay.
And the other thing is, going to the presentation that was made, it was a phenomenal presentation from people from the U of M and public safety on the indicators of children with parents that are incarcerated. And so I'll pass this around, but it is a staggering percentage that 1 in 6 Minnesota youth has a parent that has been incarcerated. So that's very unfortunate. And then yesterday we had the law library meeting, so that was great. And if you recall, several months ago we decided to not renew publications, and so I think we saved $40,000 to $45,000 on annually what we were paying in books. We are still offering online in the law library, but there's a lot of people that aren't even opening these books, so if we're paying a large premium and people aren't using it, it didn't make sense. So part of what went into that discussion is we talked about possibly adding 2 hours a week a legal services representative who wouldn't be giving legal advice, but guidance.
Information, legal information.
Information to access the what subscriptions that we have downstairs. So because we have a large amount in balance in the excess reserves, and we saved a significant amount of dollars, we did decide to go forward offering that. It's something that the judges and administration really appreciates, because quite frequently people come to court without their documents filled out completely or correctly, and so it's wasting a lot of time. And so we're excited about what this will offer, and we'll go forward with a 1-year contract starting hopefully in the fall. So that is a good thing, and that concludes my reports.
Okay.
On Wednesday, I attended the Moorhead Business Association presentation meeting, and we were given a presentation by Director Fauza Adia from the Immigrant Development Center in the town site. And Fauza spoke about many issues regarding the immigrant population in Clay County and in Fargo as well, referencing Cass County, and she talked about the existing international market that's in Fargo at this time, and their desire to perhaps direct something like that towards Clay County or towards Moorhead, because the predominance of the immigrant population exists in Moorhead. They come to Moorhead because they feel more welcome here. And she also spoke about the avid entrepreneurial spirit of these immigrants, about how her group, the Immigrant Development Center, arranges things like loans and training for these people, because many of them have no experience from their home country in anything like banking or credit or anything like that. And they bootstrap these people and help them get going on such things as car garages and things like that. And they've had several success stories right here in Moorhead with this group. And it was very interesting and a very compelling presentation. On Thursday, we had a tour of the Juvenile Detention Center. This was part of the Children's Mental Health LAC, and we saw both the secure and the non-secure facility, and answered a lot of questions I had in my mind, and it was very informative. Then also on Thursday, we had the meeting of the Clay County Collaborative Governance Board, and we approved the budget for this next year. We did have a couple of issues with some of the I don't know if the proper word is providers or stakeholders or players or whatever they are. Some of the groups that are involved in it did not respond to requests for data and validation for their budget requests, and there was some talk about maybe trying to hold their feet to the fire and try to get some response from them, and that was very important. And we also approved a slight salary bump for the director. She has not had any kind of an increase, I think, for something like 10 years, I believe, something like that, being she's not part of the county employment program or anything like that. So it works out to about 0.5% for the last 10 years for each year. So, and that was it. All right. That's my report.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, I had, going back to the 24th, I started off that day with the Prairie Lake Solid Waste meeting. And again, the key thing that we always watch for is to make sure that financially this thing, we don't have to have cash calls again, and so we're on target to meet our budget. There still is issues with the superheater and the new boiler is still having some downtime, and the lawsuit that we have on that construction and design is scheduled to be heard in the first phase of a mitigation process, and it's being held this week in Minneapolis. And we have 2 other board members going to that. That same day then, back here, we had the public outreach meeting where we discussed what was going to be the upcoming visit of the Major General from the Corps and other members from Washington, D.C. here. They talked about the assessment district and the hearing that's going to be, that's tonight, I think, and they're having it at the Fargo Dome for the folks on the North Dakota side. That just explains about that amount that would be put against their property. It's not, there was no intention to collect it, but because they have the sales tax that's supposed to deal with it. And then the land management meeting, I think Commissioner Mullerjo talked about that. The one area that she mentioned where she may have heard some discussion, there was just a little background, there was a property, a landowner who wanted to build a $750,000 home right in the footprint of where the diversion was going to go on the North Dakota side. So it was within the territorial jurisdiction of the city of West Fargo. And because there was really no regulations allowing them to deny it, they in essence had to grant this building permit. And you know, so that raised the question then throughout the entire footprint of the diversion channel, and that, you know, we're going to have the tieback levees. What happens then is, you know, so we're going to have to turn around and just buy these properties back, you know, which makes no sense, right? So the discussion was, and I brought up to them about on the Minnesota side how we have overlay districts for certain things that where we allow and don't allow things, and North Dakota law is a little different than that, so they have to deal with theirs differently than what Clay County does. But I think they're working on something there that's going to help deal with that. And you know, I think for Clay County and the Minnesota side, at some point in time, we're going to have that discussion about, you know, I would be mostly concerned with right where the footprint of the tieback levee would be, that somebody's going to go and build there, and they build some expensive house just to be torn down. It doesn't make any sense. So it's kind of like reserving an area. Once you get to the south of the tieback levees, there's certain areas in there that are not going to be allowed to be developed anyway, just because of the staging and storage area. But part of that process, the landowners, and there's this process that's being worked on right now on flowage easements. It's part of a requirement by the Corps of Engineers. And so I think Jenny and Land Management, there's also that we're hiring an appraisal company that I think is pretty acceptable to those landowners, and at least they feel comfortable with them, working on what would be a value of a flowage easement, and, you know, to take into consideration, well, okay, this landowner can no longer build, so that might be a financial burden that's worth something in this flowage easement. So that's kind of where that's at. But I do think that that we're, to be fair to everybody in the county, and in this whole project, that we do need to realize the area that there's impacts, and to try to prevent somebody building just to be torn down. You know, it was brought up, well, this person who's going to build this $750,000 house, he might be risking it because it might come in appraised at $600,000. And that's all he would get through that process. The fact of the matter is, it's still $600,000. That's taxpayer money that shouldn't be being spent if there were just the proper rules and regulations are put in place where that's going to go. If we know we're going to be building a highway, we're not going to allow somebody to build a house right where the highway is going to go. That's no different. So anyway, so that's that, and we'll have more discussions on that as we start to plan more for when gets Minnesota interest here. Then the next day we had solid waste, and that was, of course, we got the sad news that we did not get our grant dollars for the transfer station in this year's bonding bill, but we'll keep moving forward. So we'll probably have to put on the back burner those plans for what we're hoping would have been something being able to start this fall. Then that same day, then we did have the Metro Flood Diversion Authority Board meeting, and there was really nothing. I think we ended up talking more about these land issues from Land Management. And there's a draft land acquisition status report that's out there. There is they're still working on the director position. Search is on, and I think they're hoping to have something come to the next Diversion Authority Board meeting this month with an update on where they're at on that. Then the following week, Monday, we had our construction update on the correctional facility and law enforcement center, and I think you all can see exactly what's going on, and I think they're moving along very good. I think, Brian, when you give your report, you can touch on some of the change order things or whatever that we talked about. And then lastly, we had, we did have an extra diversion authority meeting that was held on Tuesday the 30th, which was an unusual one, and that is because we had the Major General and members from Washington, D.C. here on a trip and to go over some of the issues and give a report on the status of things in Washington, D.C. There is a $20 million line item in the work plan for this project, so for this year. So it went from $5 million the previous year to 20 this year, so it's going in the right direction. So, and then I had a small meeting. There's this plastic bag issue through solid waste. It's creating its own little. I mean, we have 3 subcommittees on researching issues for for plastic bags in Clay County, and so we're still working on it, and I have to keep reminding everybody this isn't about a ban. It's about how we can educate and do a better job of recycling and reusing.
Do we offer baskets for recycling plastic bags? I mean,
yeah, and that's one of the things, Commissioner Moser, that we brought up, that we especially, and when I asked the representative from the Retail Association if right now in our solid waste with our plastic bottles, if you notice that a lot of our gas stations, we have those plastic bottles, the big bottles there. And what people don't realize right now is your Hornbacher stores and some of these stores already have a container there, but nobody recognizes it. They don't know where it is. They don't recognize it. And so we talked about possibly creating a mascot type of a thing for plastic bags, which would then
baggy,
which would then have we're looking at potentially having retailers so that everybody would recognize the same thing.
Yeah.
And so
Take Back Jack or something like that.
Yeah. So, and then so that's in the works. We're trying to see how that goes. But, yeah.
No ban though, right?
No ban.
Yeah.
No ban.
Okay.
That's not in the works.
Okay.
Mr. Berg, now that we've been talking trash.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That was kind of funny. It's amazing what communication a look will generate.
Yeah.
Both Jenny and Raj and I are laughing at Commissioner Mojo's look at you where you said a mascot. We could see, that would be fun for you to do. Yeah. I think that was the message.
Yeah, I got that.
It was pretty good.
I got that.
Okay. One thing that Rhonda Porter asked me on the way out is during the reports if a commissioner would volunteer to come to this 7th Annual World Elderly Abuse Awareness Day, which is on the 8th over at the Yumcomp that they talked about this morning, to read that proclamation to the audience. It's at 8:30 in the morning on the 8th.
Okay.
I can make it no help.
That works.
I plan on attending.
All right.
Oh, you plan on attending?
Perfect.
Okay.
Then I think you'd be a good.
Yeah, I have 8 o'clock, so I can't.
Yeah, I have a conflict, so. Thank you, Commissioner Gross.
We have our volunteer, huh? Good. Thank you. We had another new hire orientation last Monday that I attended, and and a few of you have attended the new hire orientation, and we do, or at least I do, talk about in my segment about customer service and the importance of it here in Clay County, and I was happy to hear Steve Larson talk about this morning about one of their employees that really concentrates on
customer service. It's really nice to hear. Several of the meetings that I've attended have been already talked about. The diversion luncheon meeting last week, the special board meeting that they held, been talked about. We had parking meetings in reference to parking signs and shutting off and flows and things, and I think we're trying to stay on top of it as best we can. If you've noticed, we've changed things around when we're eliminating the front of the courthouse parking right now for the next 6 weeks, let's say. We removed the employees from parking along the street on 8th Avenue so that could be visitors parking, so they have easy access to it. And I know yesterday was the first day of that, and it seemed to work well. I checked a couple times during the day down at the front to see what comments were coming through, and I think people are understanding that they can park on that south side.
How is that signed as you're driving either north or south on 11th Street? How is that sign saying, is there something that says visitor parking here?
Yeah,
there or something?
no, we didn't, and we did talk about that because that is, of course, the city street. We know it's a county roadway at all, but we would then have to have the city sign that, and we thought it's the same entrance coming off of 8th Avenue as they would anyway, coming in and then into our parking lot, and that's when we put up the visitor sign, so it's pretty highly visible right there, but we didn't sign it coming off of 11th Street because we thought...
And I wonder if there could be something that, because it's 6 weeks, you know, I wonder if we could just have something that could be made that's, just like I saw right out on the street here, there's
the visitors.
Says visitor parking. Yeah. But something right, and whether it goes on the north corner of the Family Service Center lot or right by the
Sure.
bus deal there, that just points
Yeah.
visitor parking.
Well, we could certainly look at that if you think it's a little...
Well, we need to
help
make it
clarity.
as convenient as possible
Yeah.
for...
And the employees, I have to compliment the employees too. They are parking in their designated area that we've asked them to, and across the street, that's been pretty full at the school, and the northwest parking lot is full, and everything's kind of full around here, but it seems to be moving along fairly well, so we're
How do
really
we
pleased with that.
communicate that to jurors?
Well,
Like, does something go out with them when,
yeah,
when they call in, or?
I think it's when they call in and it's indicated
they've been notified.
where they should be parking in that northwest lot.
Yes. That letter that goes out to notify you that you're a juror, I think is when they... Yes, they've been told the northwest parking lot before this, yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I know that's, sorry, Mr. Berg, I know that's reiterated once the jury is convened, the court gives those specific instructions, so it's an ongoing message.
Okay, Ryan?
Had management team meeting last week. We spent quite a bit of time on budget preparation and submittals and the parameters again and different things. So we'll be moving forward with that. Plus, I guess I spent some time on budget work this past week as well. I guess I've got down here a parking lot. Joe and Brad and Eric from Holland and I met last Thursday or Friday on the parking lot design in the front and how it's laid out and the sprinkling system will be involved with keeping it hopefully watered and looking nice. So that takes some time to do the preparation for that. We talked extensively about the behavioral health meeting we had last Friday morning. I think that was a very good one. You talked about the training. That was one of the 7 steps that was we felt was needed to improve the behavioral health unit within the correctional facility, and that is going really well, funding for that. But one thing, and Commissioner Campbell, you said the business about state grants. The two people, Greg and Rebecca, were there. Rebecca did most of the presentation, but Greg was from the Department of Public Safety. And what we reiterated from that committee to them was the fact that they had one chart that showed where our population is confined, and it was in the state prison, federal prison, and then the county jails. And they were reminded that every one of those prisoners, without exception, comes through a county jail. Every one of them, whether it's a federal prisoner or a state prisoner, they end up being 6 to 9 months, maybe even up to a year by the time the trial is done. That some of this behavioral health issue needs to start at the county jail, and that we are partners in this, and it would really be beneficial for the state confinements to have a program that started in the county system. And so he said, you know, we should really contact our legislators and other legislators in regards to getting some grant funding from the state to do that. And I think that's worthy of pursuing. We also met with Michael Burns, the architect that is working on the juvenile center design, or it has been. Remember, Steve came to you folks last, or a week or two ago, about some additional dollars to pursue that, and you approved that unanimously. So we're working on a contract with them, and we'll keep you informed. Of course, that'll have to come back to you folks anyway, but what he has agreed to is give us any credit that we have spent up till now working on that towards the complete plan design dollars. So we're pleased with that. You asked me to talk a little bit about the change orders and things like that. There really wasn't a lot new. We've talked about the heating plant issue over at the current heating plant that will then heat the new correctional facility. There's some real positive things, but there's some costs that are involved in there, and we're really working through that. I'd like to be able to tell you what the costs are, but it's just speculation on my part. And the engineers are looking at that right now and the improvements that can be made so that we can actually almost lower our heating costs even with adding 80,000 square feet of space. And that's going to be really positive, but it's going to cost us some money to do so. But then we're still working through the lighting and the video cameras and things that will go in the northwest parking lot. They've got the figure on that, and you've heard about that 2 or 3 times, but that's still in the mix as to where that is going to, the funding is going to come from. And also Commissioner Campbell has asked that we work on a more detailed expense and accountability of these extra things that are coming up, because there's a lot of them in regards to the parking lot and the retention ponds, and we want to make sure that we have accounted for every dollar that we're spending. And that's very important with the upcoming capital bonding and the capital improvement plan, so that we have everything accounted for when we move forward with that. So we're doing some more precise work on those identifications. So I don't recall anything else that we've got going on in the county. So
Pretty busy, right?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Brian. Do you need anything?
No, thank you.
Oh, I was going to, we talked about our meeting date for July 5th. I'm wondering if, because we do have some people who are planning on being out of town, and some people who would just as soon not have to travel back into town late at night. So I know they have county has a management committee meeting at 10 o'clock on July 6th. So I'm proposing that we move our board meeting for that day to 9 a.m. on July 6th.
9 a.m.?
9 a.m. on July 6th. And so we'd have an hour. Right now, there was nothing on the agenda for the 5th other than to pay the bills, so it should be a short. Colleen asked me if there could be things put on there, and I said yes, but keep in mind, we're probably looking at an hour-long time frame, so. If that meets with the board's approval, we should have a motion.
I'll make a motion to reschedule the July 5th meeting to July 6th at 9 a.m.
I'll second that motion, but like I mentioned, Thursdays when the packets go out for the next meeting, so.
Yeah, and that's.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's you know,
we need to meet.
Well, the idea would be to just keep the bills being paid,
Okay.
so.
But also if something comes up.
Yeah, if something comes up, it's there. Otherwise, it would be a short meeting.
Like, I'll second it.
All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carried.
Mr. Chair, I did have one more thing for
Okay.
my report.
Go ahead.
And I have, Kevin Kassenberg from the Soil and Water contacted me and said that they just received some information, and I'm going to hand this out to you, on the legislative action on the buffer zone, and they've made some monies available, and action has to be taken by the end of June. And he is going to pursue with Bruce Albright from the Buffalo Red Watershed Group as to a plan that may take place, but this board would be required to take some action, very possibly by the end of June, if you want to partake in some of those dollars. They're enforcement dollars, and what I guess my direction to Kevin is that Kevin and Bruce are much more informed on this buffer zone, and I'm sure the board would welcome a recommendation from them to consider what to do on that. So I'll just hand this out. This is a memo that came out that he had forwarded to me, and so it's still really kind of up in the air.
I was gonna bring up that thing because I know the Buffalo was sort of looking at doing enforcement, but the Wild Rice is not. Well, not that they're not gonna do it, I mean, but that they were holding off on it, so should we be pursuing that with Wild Rice too?
Yeah, we did talk about that a little bit with Kevin, and that's a very good point. And hopefully Bruce and Kevin Kassenberg will talk about that and see if it can be a split delivery where Soil and Water would handle part of the county, or Buffalo Red would handle part of the county, or you know, I guess I don't know the authority part of it. I'm hoping we had that same discussion, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know
Well,
whether
Rice
we can
wasn't
tell the
very
Wild
excited.
Rice that they have to do the enforcement.
Yeah, they weren't very excited about
No, they weren't.
participating. So,
Some comments that have been raised to me, though, is people want the enforcement agency to be an elected body. And while I think the watershed, specifically the Buffalo Red, has been willing to do that and able to do that, having SWCD do it for the entire county may cover that because it is an elected body.
Yeah, if they would do the entire county, that would be,
That
would be ideal. I thought the Buffalo Watershed was gonna do it.
Well, and they've talked about that too, but I think for this board's sake, it's important to have a cohesive plan for the entire county.
Definitely.
And with discussions that we've had, it's been quite apparent
They weren't
that
gonna.
there are two agencies that have a different
Right.
philosophy on it, and so maybe having SWCD would allow, one, an elected body to be accountable, and two, allow Clay County to have a cohesive plan.
Great idea.
just this last thing, this was something you folks asked last time, and I did forward the information, but you asked me to notify the sheriff's office about the Saban issue and things, and they sent some, they've really been doing some work out there, I think the sheriff's office have. So that's a good thing. And also, I did send a note to, I copied you folks on that too, to our three legislators in regards to, I think it did turn out to be a pretty successful year for Clay County. That overhead, the bonding on the overhead for Moorhead was really a huge success, plus our sales tax was a huge success. There's gonna be a little increase in county program aid. They changed the formula, but I think it does mean a little increase for Clay County as well. Plus, there were some other things too, from social services standpoint. So I think overall it was a pretty good session for Clay County.
Reminder, next week, our board meeting is at 4:30, and Board of Equalization is at 6:30, so.
Say that again.
Next,
Tentatively, I have 5 o'clock, yeah.
oh, okay, on this deal, it's at 4:30. So it's looking at 5 with the number of items?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're looking at 5 now next week.
Well,
The Felton
yes.
Prairie at 3.
And, yes, and check your schedule when it comes out, because we'll publish that, because what we're doing is backing up if we get other things, so it may come back into the 4:30 range.
So we have Felton Prairie.
I'm confused. We have our regular county board meeting at Tuesday next week. No?
Yes,
At
but
night.
it's in the afternoon, not in the morning.
Okay, I missed that. Okay. And that's at 4:30?
It's,
5 right now.
4:30 to 5.
it's scheduled at 5 right now, but
When you get your back.
be here at 4:30.
That's right. That's a good.
All right, that's, I guess with that, we'll be adjourned.
That